Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name is Katie Walsh, and I'm one of Penn Foster's early childhood education instructors, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Sarah Owens. We're getting ready in just a minute to get started with a quick conversation with you all, prospective students and current students, about creative careers in early childhood education. So before we get started, we just want to welcome you and let you know that we're beginning, I guess now. I guess it is actually 3 o'clock. So before we get started, we just want to do a quick screen check and audio check just to make sure that everything is working appropriately. So on your screen, you should see a PowerPoint presentation, and then you also should have access to GoToWebinar's control panel. You are probably finding it on the upper right side of your screen. It has an orange arrow that you can minimize or expand to open or close that control panel. Embedded within the control panel itself is a questions box and also a chat box. So if you can access one box and one of those, either questions or chat box, and just simply let us know that you can see the screen and hear my voice, and we'll get ready to begin. If for some reason you lose audio at any point today, you can also call into a phone number that's listed there and still be able to listen in. So, oh, good. It looks like you're able to access that questions box. Wonderful. Thank you. So yeah, while you're there in that questions box, if you would please share with us a little bit of background information about who you are and where you're coming from, what work you're currently doing, what your career goals and interests are, especially what brings you into this conversation today, talking about early childhood education. What are you hoping to learn? What are you hoping to take away? So what are your objectives for today's conversation? And then also share with us any questions that you may have. Please know anything that you're typing into that questions box should be coming directly to me and to Sarah. So you should have that expectation of privacy, of confidentiality. Our conversation is being recorded today. I have some current Penn Foster ECE students that are really interested in catching this. Unfortunately, they're at work at the moment, but I promised I would share this with them later. So please know that even though the session is being recorded, anything that you're typing into that questions box is also not being included with recording. So again, still that same privacy and confidentiality. We wish that we could hear your voices as well as you listening to our voices. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way, but we love active participation. So definitely be very chatty and put a lot of feedback into those questions boxes there. So a little bit of background information on the voices that you're listening to. So as I said, my name is Katie Walsh, and I am one half of Team ECE, Early Childhood Education here at Penn Foster. I've been here at Penn Foster exactly 5 years. Prior to joining Penn Foster, and I guess it's relevant to talk a little bit about my experiences. So prior to joining Penn Foster, I spent a number of years as a lead teacher in academic preschool, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten classrooms. I would go back in a heartbeat if I could. Sarah and I joke all the time and I say, I want to go back. I want to work in the classroom. I also have some experience as a school owner and school administrator, as an employer, as a director, as a children's program coordinator for a local library here in northeastern Pennsylvania, here in Scranton. So for those of you that are big fans of NBC's hit show, The Office, there really is a Scranton, Pennsylvania. And in fact, we really do have an office there as well. And I also serve as a professional development specialist contracted through the CDA Council. A really fancy way of making myself sound important. I do verification visits for individuals who are working towards a CDA credential. All of that before I became an instructor here at the college 5 years ago, and before I came on board and had the pleasure of working with Sarah Owens, who's really terrific. Sarah, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Katie. So I'll just share quickly a little bit of my background in the field. My work experience is solely in preschool. I worked for the local Head Start here in the Scranton area for about 6 years before I joined Penn Foster's team, but I do have some educational and school experience, also with special education and early childhood education. I'm also a CDA PD specialist. I can't speak this afternoon. And I'm a mom to 3 young children. So I not only have professional, but also personal experience working with children.
Not only all of that, but she's absolutely the very best coworker and colleague ever. I wish everyone could have a Sarah Owens in their life, and I mean that sincerely. So, Sarah, thank you again for hanging out this afternoon. Sarah and I, when we saw the invitations come out to present these virtual open office hour sessions, we put our heads together and said, absolutely, we need to do this because we need to be talking to current students and also potential students about how there are some misconceptions that are built into the work that we do and also the directions that we can go in with these degrees and diplomas and certificates and credentials that we're earning in early childhood education. So just a quick pause here and asking you again to be really active in that questions box and share with us what you consider to be the benefits of working in early childhood education. What is it that you really love or think that you would probably love about working in early childhood education? You know, why is this your calling? Why do you feel like this is your passion? And also, let's be honest, let's keep it real. Recognizing that there are some challenges too, as well, that, you know, there are sometimes some limitations or some hesitations that people may have about working in early childhood education, and that's okay too. But if you would please just take that time and share your thoughts with us. And Sarah, if you can contribute to anything that you're seeing there in the questions box, if you could kind of call that out for our participants.
Someone said they just really love being able to make a difference in young children's lives. They feel like it's the most important job, so that's really great.
Especially too with the research that we know about critical brain development from the ages of birth up to, you know, the fifth birthday, and a little bit beyond and a little bit before that. We know that these years, you know, birth through age 8, which by the way is considered to be the range of early childhood education. We know how critical it is for children to be exposed and be put into environments, be working with people, be surrounded by people who love them and also love the field of early childhood education, professionals who are knowledgeable, who are skilled, who are trained, who are true professionals and working in early childhood education. I will tell you, I will confess really quickly to all of you here. My first love wasn't necessarily early childhood education. I thought, you know, when I was in college many years ago, I won't tell you how long ago, but when I was in college, I thought I really wanted to be an elementary school teacher. And I will even admit to you that I probably said to people in college, you know, I'm only taking ECE courses just because they're kind of there, but really I want to be an elementary school teacher because I want to be a real teacher in a real classroom with real students. And I think that was a kind of a really arrogant mindset that I had years and years ago. It wasn't until a few years later, I was a stay-at-home mom. My son was a preschool age student. His teacher was going away for a week. She asked me to come in and substitute teach. And I'm telling you the truth, I was in that classroom one morning. It was a half day. And I called my husband at lunchtime and I said, oh my goodness, this is it. I have to do this for the rest of my life. And it's just been my passion since then. And I know that Sarah has shared very similar experiences. So, of course, we see so many of the positives, getting to work with young children, getting to have that positive influence on them, helping them to develop a lifelong love of learning, getting them to be so excited about coming to school, helping them to be curious, to feel confident, to feel smart, to wonder about the world around them, making sure that we're working with families to provide them experiences that are age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, culturally appropriate. Of course, there are some limitations too. You know, long hours, not necessarily always respected for the great work that we do. Sometimes people think that we are nothing more than glorified babysitters, that all we do is play day in and day out. I think that's a limitation. I see that mentioned as well. And then two, you know, historically speaking, we're not always the most well compensated for our work. So I don't think anyone necessarily goes into the field of early childhood education thinking that they're going to retire a millionaire. So just some things to be realistic about. And I know that there are some other thoughts that you're sharing too. So just keeping those in the back of our minds, the direction that Sarah and I wanted to go in today is to share, and I kind of touched on this a moment ago when I told you how I came to early childhood education. Wasn't necessarily planned, is just recognizing that degrees in early childhood education or earning a credential, a CDA credential, or a certificate, completing a certificate program and walking away, or a career program and walking away with that certificate or walking away with that diploma, does not necessarily mean that we are all put on the exact same path and that we all have to follow the exact same trajectory. Just like the children that we work with, each and every one of them is very unique and very special and very different. And that applies to us too as early childhood professionals. And we all have our own experiences. We all have our own goals and aspirations, our own strengths and our own talents. And so just to kind of talk a little bit about that and also about the programs that we have here at Penn Foster, specifically in early childhood education. So There are some careers in ECE that are pretty obvious, pretty predictable, the well-known, and you probably already can guess the next two or three that we're talking about. So one would be an in-home childcare center provider or owner. So having your home environment serve two purposes. Number one is your home, but when the children are there during your business hours, whatever business hours you're setting for yourself in response to or in accordance with the needs of the families of the young children that you care for, you're working from home, spending time in your home environment. You're probably working with smaller groups of kids, which for some of us might be a benefit. You're also probably working with mixed age groups. That could be a benefit, or that could be a blessing depending on how you look at it. Another really great blessing for this is that you do have some say in a flexible schedule as well. So you can be accommodating to families. Maybe perhaps your in-home childcare center is only going to be open on evenings and weekends because there's demand for that in your local community, or so, you do have a lot of control and a lot of say over which children you're bringing into your home and which families, and what your schedule is going to be. And there's also a lot of ability to determine what it is exactly you're doing with the children on a day-to-day basis. So if in-home doesn't necessarily work for you, that's okay. I think most of us expect that instead we're probably going to be directed into center-based teaching, working as lead teachers, as assistant teachers, as teachers' aides. In the early childhood environment, we typically, as I said earlier, are working with children from the ages of birth up to the 8th birthday. That's defined as early childhood education. Although most of us are probably working in infants' classrooms or in toddlers' classrooms or in preschool classrooms, pre-kindergarten classrooms, perhaps some kindergarten classrooms as well, and then probably some after-school care in addition to that. And this applies to substitute teachers as well. So if you're not yet ready to be working day to day on a full-time basis. Something to think about too is these programs and here at Penn Foster can also support if you just want to do this conditionally, if you want to do this occasionally, putting your name on a substitute teacher roster as well. This is something for you to think about. Or if you're ready to take that next step and work as a director, as administrator of a center-based childcare facility, again, so many really great opportunities and so many really great benefits to the position, and also, some really fun things to do on a day-to-day basis if these are your idea of fun. So not only do you have a hand in shaping the outcome of each individual child, you're mentoring, you are guiding, you're supervising the work of all of the teachers and all of the assistants and all of the faculty and the staff. So, you're working with them, you're mentoring them, you're planning professional development for them. You are doing the hiring and creating the culture and doing the career development with them. And then also other areas of responsibility would be making sure that your center is able to stay licensed and accredited, and maintaining enrollments, generating that interest in the local community in your particular center, and also obviously working well within the confines of a budget that's been set for you. So those are the things that we think that most people think. That's the work that we do in early childhood education. And really, the reason why Sarah and I are here today is because we've been saying to ourselves, we wish people knew that there's so many other directions that we can go in once we've earned a degree or a credential or a certificate or a diploma in early childhood education. And, whether it's an associate degree like the program that we have here at Penn Foster, which we are really proud of. Of course, we're biased. We're the instructors for that program, but we know that it's a really great program. So many of our students leave Penn Foster after they've earned their associate degree, and they move on to other schools and other institutions because they're interested in earning a bachelor's degree program. We don't, or maybe I want to say we don't yet, have a bachelor's degree program specifically in early childhood education here at Penn Foster, although it's something that we talk about quite often. And I wish that we could say that we were nearing the stages of getting that. But that doesn't mean that our students who are here can only earn associate degrees. So many students go on to earn bachelor's degrees in education and master's degrees in education, and even doctorate level degrees as well. So talking about some of these other career paths that we can take, Sarah and I just wanted to have a quick conversation with you, give you some guidance, and maybe hopefully spark some interest, get you to think really creatively about what it is exactly that you're hoping to do. So Sarah has information for you on English language learners, being a teacher for ELL and ESL. Sarah, did I say that correctly?
You did. And this is actually a really interesting path if you're interested in helping students and even adults learn English as a second language. So you would be what's called an ESL teacher, a teacher of English as a second language. And then there are some kind of broad and then more specific terms that go along with that. So teachers of English, and this is, I'm sorry for kind of stumbling over my words, but it's teachers of English to speakers of other languages is what TESOL stands for. And that's kind of an umbrella term for all people who teach English to non-native speakers. So if you were teaching English to a child, to an adult, it wouldn't matter. You would be a TESOL, and that's much easier to say than what it actually stands for. ELL are the English language learners. So those are the students, whether they're children or adults, who are learning English as their non-native language. Then the three specific categories you could kind of fall into within that field. And it's some of these might require that you have a little bit higher degree, a little bit more training, but there's always options in this particular position. TESL is teaching English as a second language. These teachers typically work for public or private K-12 schools. In some situations, you might be sourced to work with early childhood children as well. Working in a preschool, a lot of times early childhood educators are kind of become ESL teachers just as part of their day-to-day job. But a TESL, teaching English as a second language, those are teachers who are specifically contracted to teach children and young adults English as a second language. Then ESOL are English speakers of other languages. So those would actually be teachers who are working outside of the elementary, secondary education system and instead working with colleges, whether they're community colleges or four-year colleges. They could be private tutoring companies. So this is where you might fall into being contracted to work in like an early childhood setting, different community programs, helping adults and children both learning English as a second language. And then the last one is teaching English as a foreign language. And that's where you would actually go to a country whose native language is not English, and you would teach English to the students there. And it could be, again, children or it could be adults, depending on what area you go into or what organization you decide to work with. But that would be you actually traveling and going to that country to teach them English as a second language. So a lot of great opportunities just within that one area.
Sarah, thank you for sharing that. You actually made it make sense. I was looking at the screen and I sometimes get confused. So thank you for re-explaining it to me. We're actually going to come back to that last one, TESL. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a couple minutes as well. Another direction to go in is working as an early childhood consultant. Typically, these are individuals that have amassed a fair amount of experience over the years working in diverse settings and having a hand in early childhood education. But there's some really great ways to market yourself as a consultant. So this doesn't mean that you're working day to day in the field or in the classroom. Instead, you're doing the work of a consultant. You're sharing your guidance, your expertise, and being compensated for being able to walk individuals through the licensing process in your state, for example, helping them to get their school or their center up off the ground, built from scratch. You are walking them through how to license, how to get their center or their school accredited. Perhaps you're coming in and troubleshooting some very specific challenges that they're having. Perhaps employee development and retention is a particular challenge or concern for a school, for a center, for an employer. And so you step in and you work with them on a contractual basis for a short period of time or a longer period of time, where you are giving your guidance, your strategies, and leading them to, to really support and strengthen and be able to maintain their staff. So many other different directions that we can go in terms of consulting. And I just wanted to share, consulting can be done in person and it's really great. It's really convenient when we get to do that, when we get to physically walk into a center and say, oh, I really love this. And, over here, have you ever thought about doing this a different way? But for those of you that are limited in terms of your location, please know that this option also applies to you because early childhood consulting can be done online as well. So perhaps what you want to do is, before you think about going out and doing this on your own, is, connect with some consultants, get some feedback from them about their workload, their hours of availability, their compensation. Their career satisfaction is huge too. So talk with them about what they especially like about their position. And consulting is a little bit different from coaching and mentoring, but coaching and mentoring are still really important elements of any consulting position. So just something to think about there as well. I included this one because, Sarah, I haven't told you this yet, so you're going to find out along with everybody else this last one. I want to do this one. So we can also use our degrees, our backgrounds, our experiences, our credentials and certifications and diplomas and certificates that we've earned in early childhood education to work as a nanny. And I think as soon as you see that word nanny on the screen, you probably immediately think about that stereotypical Mary Poppins or Nanny McPhee or Mrs. Doubtfire or, whatever your default setting is for nanny. And I have to admit, that's kind of mine too. I kind of have a stereotype in my mind. Maybe I'm a little biased. But as I was doing some research for this conversation that Sarah and I wanted to have with you guys today, we were looking at some other types of nanny positions and realizing that it's not just one size fits all. So nannies can be live in, they can be live out. So they simply go for a few hours or, over the course of several days and then step back out and come back, retreat to their own homes, their own residences. A nanny is similar to, but not exactly like a baby nurse. So a baby nurse you would expect to be, short term. This could be somebody who comes in and helps in the first few days or the first few weeks or maybe the first month or two of a child's life. And using your experience and your expertise, your skills, your knowledge, your training in working with newborns, being able to get in there and be a support to that mom and to that newborn. And then as the family is accommodating and as the newborn is settling into their new life, then you're able to step out and then work with a new family instead. So thinking about baby nurses in those way, not necessarily a nurse in the medical sense, but in the nanny sense. Mother's helpers as well, nanny housekeepers. So there's some consideration about whether or not a nanny is exclusively taking care of the children, or is the nanny taking care of the children and also the home environment in which he or she is working. So something to consider if you don't mind doing housework, if that's something that you would like to do, that could be something that you can partner into or find a way to use that to boost yourself in terms of your employment requirement or eligibility. Advertising that that's something that you enjoy doing is the housework in addition to the nanny work. So Sarah, there's a thing called a travel nanny. And apparently what it is you put yourself out for hire, that you go on vacations with families and, all of your expenses are paid. You're not there necessarily to lounge around and enjoy the sights and get some rest and relaxation. Instead, you're there and you're probably working, 24 hours a day. You're probably on call at least 24 hours a day. So you're able to, when parents want to or need to be separated from their child during that vacation time, perhaps mom and dad, or perhaps I should say the parents want to have some alone time, you're there to as that on-site caregiver for the children. And then during the times, I'm sure when families want to spend that quality time together, quietly step away and get to do your own thing for a little bit of time. So yeah, there's an entire career field that's travel nannies, and I have to admit I was a little too excited about that. So I don't know if ever you see me disappear for a couple weeks. I might be being a travel nanny, unless you want to come with me and then we can just be travel nannies together. What do you think?
I'm in.
Okay, that works.
You
That
sold
works.
me at travel.
Yep. So another direction to go in is family support specialist. Coming back to the idea for just a moment about being able to go into homes and conduct visits, and especially for families who might be disadvantaged, families who might be challenged in some ways, being able to help connect them to their community, especially to community resources. So these are families that don't necessarily have the ability to self-advocate or don't necessarily know what it is exactly that they need or how to go about getting their needs met. So perhaps you're, conducting visits, getting to know the family dynamic really well, getting to understand each individual family member and the role that they play, and also being able to really quickly assess and continue ongoing assessments and understand what are the family's strengths And what are the things that make this individual family work really well together? What are their challenges? Where do they need additional support? And what resources are available to support them and putting them in contact and communication, offering to facilitate that connection so that the family is benefiting from that support. So family home specialist is making referrals. As I said, they're conducting those assessments continuously. Of course, there's some documentation that would be included with this. They're advocating on behalf of the family. So, they're that point person that is knowledgeable, that's experienced, and that can speak out for families that maybe perhaps don't necessarily know how to ask for help themselves. And, being a coordinator, being a facilitator is a really important part of that as well. Again, there's no cookie cutter approach to this. There are so many different directions that someone who wants to work in family support or work as a titled family support specialist, so many different directions. So you can work with families of children that have special needs. You can work with families that are economically disadvantaged. You can work with families that perhaps have someone who is, a family member who's away, a family member who perhaps is incarcerated, or a family member who is in the military, for a long period of time. So many different directions that we can go in terms of family support specialists. Not too much to explain there. It pretty much is self-explanatory. Another direction that we can work in is working as a wraparound. Here in the state of Pennsylvania, Sarah and I work in PA, and I learned, and I thought this was universal, I thought this was a term that was applied in all 50 states and beyond, is the term therapeutic support staff, or TSS. And I learned that actually it's the state of Pennsylvania, we call these individuals TSS, or therapeutic support staff, or in other areas they're considered to be a wraparound. But a wraparound or a TSS, this person is, their role, their position, their function is to support one individual child in the context of the classroom, in the context of the home environment, out in the public setting as well. So this is a person who is really focused on this one individual child. And this one individual child is coming to them with a specific set of special needs. So it could be some type of physical support. Most often it's actually behavioral support, social and emotional support. So you might see a TSS or a wraparound doing their work at times, again, in the home environment, in the public setting. You might see them with children in amusement parks or in shopping malls or out at restaurants. Most often we see them as well in classroom settings. And that person is there to just, really keep their focus and their attention devoted to that particular child. They get to know that child very, very well. They understand that child's abilities, where they are in terms of their growth and their development. They also typically have some really good tips, techniques, strategies that work for that particular child. So they're able to modify, to adapt, to differentiate a lot of support for that child, so that it's really really individually appropriate for that child. And they're there again if that child needs some behavioral support, if that child needs some support maintaining their attention, if that child has challenges in terms of their emotional development, regulating their emotions, there's that person who's right there, so that the parents or the teacher doesn't have to stop what they're doing with the other children and individually attend to that particular child. So the TSS workers that I've known, and I've worked with many of them over the course of my years, most of them find their work to be incredibly rewarding. Sometimes they talk about their work being incredibly challenging as well, and I think that's true, and it's important that we reflect on that. But by and large, the TSS workers that I've worked with, or wraparound, they typically tend to speak very positively about their work. They tend to make really great connections, not only with the child but also with the families, and they believe that they're doing really good work in helping that particular child. Sarah, please jump in if there's anything that you want to say. I feel like I'm doing all the talking. I'm sorry. So also children's program coordinator. This was actually me. There were years where I was a school teacher, and then there were years where I was a school owner and administrator. And then when I was ready to step away from that for a while, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do next. And I wanted to just kind of sit very still and think about which direction I wanted to move in. And a position came to me and said that they were, essentially looking for a children's program coordinator for a library. So I was doing all of their regular story time programming and all of their special programming. And then I did a lot of community engagement in that particular area, connecting families that were frequent patrons of the library, getting them in contact with a lot of community support agencies and organizations that they might not have otherwise known about. I also developed, because I'm a teacher and I think like a teacher and I work like a teacher, I also developed some school readiness programs through that library as well. So we did some preschool classes and some preschool transitioning into the kindergarten setting, specifically through the library. The area that I was working in was unique. My library patrons seemed to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. They were either had a lot of resources available to them, or they had virtually no resources available to them. Um, for some of the families, they were financially secure. For most of my families, there was some financial insecurity that was happening with them. So it was always a challenge for me to try to strike that perfect balance, that perfect chord, and make sure that my work was encompassing all of the families and all of the children that were coming to me. I loved it. I would go back again in a heartbeat and do that work all over again. In fact, every time I go into a library, my family members kind of have to literally pull me out of the library and say, "You don't work here. Like, you have to leave. You have to let the children program coordinators just do their work." Um, I'm always half tempted to walk into a library and pick a book up off the shelf and just see how many kids I can gather around me and just do my own impromptu story time. I don't know, Sarah, does that seem crazy? You would probably be right there with me.
I was sorry, I was muted two
Yeah.
different ways.
So one of these days I'm going to come to work and just say, "Oh, I just did my own story time at, such and such library, such and such bookstore. I don't necessarily work there, but hey, I'm going to conduct a story time there as well."
It would be
Really great,
fun.
really, really rewarding work, definitely. Can we just go back to this for one quick second too? Can I also just use this opportunity to just really quickly say, I was surprised when I was a children's program coordinator, and we have, some really great local colleges and universities in this area, brick and mortar schools. I was always reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, if you have students that are working towards ECE degrees, send them to me, please, because I would love to partner with them and do story time with them." It's a great experience, great way for them to learn about transition techniques. It's a great way for them to try out in a fail-safe environment, how to practice some guidance and behavior and discipline management techniques as well, how to command children's attention, and how to read a story aloud, how to sing in a public setting. And and sometimes I had students from local colleges and universities that were really enthusiastic and wanted to take advantage of the fact that there was someone in the community that said, "Come to me and, try this out, practice with us." Um, Other times, students had no interest in it, and it always surprised me. And so I reflect back on it, and I always say to our Penn Foster students, look for these extra opportunities in your local area as well, and don't be afraid to reach out and identify yourself as a student and say, "I'm working towards a degree or credential or certification or a diploma, a certificate in early childhood education, and would you mind if I come in and observe you in the work that you do, and can I try, can I practice, can I get up there with you and do that type of work?" And you'd be surprised, how often people are willing to open their doors and open their environments and let you come in and shadow and let you, try some things out and really be there to support you, give you some really, really strong, really supportive feedback as well. So don't be afraid to ask. Another direction that we can go in is working with youth organizations and nonprofits. Perhaps we want to develop some experience as grant writers so that we're able to help get funding, really critical, really important, really necessary funding for early childhood programs. We can work in advocacy as well, as advocates for things that are happening in terms of public policy, perhaps in terms of politics. I know it's kind of emotionally charged at this point where we are in 2018, but thinking about what you believe the political needs are of young children and then finding ways to advocate for them. And it doesn't necessarily need to be just politics. There are many other ways to advocate for children as well. I will tell you a quick story. I'm terrified of public speaking. Sarah knows this about me, and yet a few years ago, something happened in my local community with a child that I didn't know, and I followed very closely the development of this child and this family, and it taught me to realize something larger was happening with all families. This particular child, this particular story had to do with with autism spectrum disorders. And so I was watching what was unfolding and realizing that there was a need. There was something that that we necessarily weren't doing, that organized, that the National Institute of Health, the NIH, in Washington, D.C., I felt like there was something that they needed to be aware of, something needed to be brought to their attention so they could do something differently. So within a week, I think 13 days after this particular event, sad event in my local community, I was down in Washington, D.C., in public speaking as an advocate on behalf of this cause that I believed in. So if you told me, 2 weeks prior that that's what I would be doing, I would be advocating very publicly on camera and in front of this large room and talking about this, I would probably say, nope, not me. I can't do that. I'm afraid of public speaking. And yet, I think as early childhood educators, we're so passionate about our work, and we really just want to do everything that we possibly can to make the world a better place for all of these young children and their families. And it takes us in really interesting directions sometimes, including advocating, getting involved in public policy and programming. This is actually where I am at this moment. I am not only an instructor here at Penn Foster, I'm also a Penn Foster student. I enrolled myself earlier this year in our criminal justice program. So I'm working towards, slowly but surely, towards the degree, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And it's just because, not to talk about myself, but just to kind of give you an example of directions that we can sometimes move in. I'm Early childhood education is my true love and my calling, but I've also had a very natural interest all my life in criminal justice issues, especially criminal justice reform. And so I'm looking around at my age and I'm saying, I don't know that we're necessarily doing enough to support families, to support children who have families, family members, parents who are incarcerated. I don't know that we're doing enough for those families. I don't know that we're necessarily doing enough for people who are incarcerated, helping them to reacclimate and become returning citizens, and to be able to, to come back home and to successfully parent young children. So fingers crossed, my hope is I'm able to take everything that I know about early childhood education and everything that I learn here as a Penn Foster student myself, and I wouldn't be a student if I didn't believe in our programs, but finding a way to marry those two together and hopefully someday being able to work towards, additionally supporting. Sarah, you're not getting rid of me just yet. If I do this work, it's going to be in the evenings and the weekends, so you're stuck with me unless you and I decide that we want to start our own early childhood publishing company. Perhaps we want to think about how to take our expertise and create our own blogs or vlogs, publishing in that way. We could be doing this ourselves as employees, or I'm sorry, as employers, self-employed, or working for publishing companies that produce content specific to the early childhood field. We could be writing newsletters, working on trade publications, newspaper articles too, magazine articles. So again, if writing is your thing, if you feel really comfortable and really confident in your writing abilities, if you think you have something really important to say, and the written word is your way to do it, definitely think about looking into publishing. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but this conversation today doesn't mean that you need to necessarily pick one of these and follow it exclusively. I mean, why not find 2 or 3 or 4 of these ideas, or maybe things that Sarah and I aren't even going to mention today, and find ways to do a little bit at a time. That's another thing that we can do too. So maybe you want to find time to be able to say, this is my job, but I also do this. And also, I work with a publishing company and I produce a newsletter, or, I have an early childhood blog and I found some sponsors, I found some advertisers. And so I, generate some income from writing a blog specifically about early childhood education. That's a really great development, or a really great field to go into at this time. So whether you're working for someone else or you're self-employed, you may also want to think about curriculum design and development, writing your own textbooks. Sarah and I'm constantly teasing Sarah and saying, Sarah, let's do this. We can write this textbook. Perhaps you want to think about taking everything that you know about curriculum, all of your favorite lessons and activities and experiences that you've ever taught, putting them together and developing your own curriculum, your own book, and publishing it that way. You can create in-print resources. You can create ebook resources. You can go to websites like Teachers Pay Teachers, TPT, if you're familiar with that, and take your own content, and essentially you're putting it out there for sale. It's kind of like an Etsy, except it's for teachers, and putting your own content out there and generating a profit, generating an income that way as well. Sales representatives, I know this sounds really weird to say that people who have degrees credentials or experience working in early childhood education can transition into the field of sales. And yet, if you've ever gone to an early childhood conference or expo, you know that there are individuals that are there as sales representatives. And whenever I get engaged in dialogues with those people, I think sometimes, I go over and I ask questions about their product. And I have to admit, I'm kind of expecting them to really know their product. And instead, in just a couple quick seconds of conversation with them, I realize these people are individuals who must have some really serious experience working in the field of early childhood education, because they're talking to me about their own experiences in their own classroom, or they're pointing out ways how to use their product, and I'm able to make that connection and see, oh, this is someone who must have spent a number of years teaching. This is someone who really knows their stuff. So this isn't someone who necessarily was looking for a position and just accepted this position with no experience in early childhood education. So think too about ways that, perhaps if that's something that you think is a strength, if you think that you'd work really well in sales, find a way to marry those two together. And also think too about research. We're winding up, coming towards the end of some of these ideas that we have for you. I think only one or two left, but think too about what type of work that you can do in research. Now, I will share that working in research probably need more advanced degrees, but if research is something that you like doing, earning that associate degree in early childhood education is putting you in really solid footing already. And researchers, we know, do really important work, recording data, interpreting data, analyzing, interviewing, being able to not only record what's happening present day, but using those critical thinking skills to be able to predict what they think is potentially going to happen in the future. And finally, wrapping back to the conversation that we had with Sarah earlier about some of those English language learning experiences, there also are opportunities. There are some companies that are based, I guess, in the US, but also partner internationally as well, or vice versa. So you are working online as an online teacher. So if you have a laptop with a webcam and a microphone, you can actually log into an online classroom and teach young children, just like Sarah said earlier, some English language skills as well. So think about what she was sharing and recognize it's something that can be done from the privacy of your own home, using your own laptop and webcam. And you can do this, working nationally, working with students, in whatever country you're in. I know that we have some international students that are joining us today. We're glad you're here. So this can be done in your own nation, in your own community, or it could be, something that you're working with international students as well. So now that we've given you, hopefully, a lot to think about and a lot to consider, let's just take a quick moment and talk about what your next step probably is going to be. So to create your own creative career in early childhood education, first you need to decide where it is exactly that you want to go. So probably number one, most important, is deciding what exactly are your career goals and aspirations. And what are your tendencies? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? What are your preferences? What are your abilities, your strengths, your talents? Where do you feel that you could make the most difference, and where do you want to make a difference? So, asking yourself some really critical questions, really reflecting and getting to know which direction you want to move in. And then number two, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to come back to it because it's really important to me to reiterate how important it is to make those connections with other professionals. So when you find someone that's doing really great work and you want to follow in their footsteps, connect with them, ask them questions, offer to take them out for coffee or buy them lunch if they'll have a sit-down conversation with you, and come prepared, have a list of questions. Ask them for their advice, ask them to share with you things that they wish that they knew way back when they were getting started. What advice do they have for you? What direction can they point you in? What contacts can they help you to make in that particular line of work? So ask a lot of questions, investigate, definitely volunteer, as I said earlier, be open to all volunteer experiences, knock on doors and say, I would like to come in and volunteer my services. What can I do for you? A great way to get yourself known in your local area as well. And also it looks terrific on resumes too. And then it's time to do some research. And so you're looking for state requirements to understand what your state expects, mandates that each applicant bring to the table in terms of being employed in specific positions, like in classroom teachers or owning and operating your own in-home childcare center, for example. And then also understand that not only do requirements vary from state to state or country to country or province to province or county to county, but requirements can also vary, within that local area. Requirements can still vary again from school to school or center to center, from employer to employer. So make sure that you're understanding as well their own individual requirements and employment qualifications that you must satisfy. Have dialogues with them. Identify yourself as a Penn Foster student very proudly. Share that you're a Penn Foster student and that this is the degree or the credential or the certificate that you are, the diploma that you're working towards, and share with them that you're taking a very active role in your own professional development, and you'd like to ask them some questions and really gain some really secure understanding of what it is exactly that you need to do. And then, as we said very early on, consider income. Because it's important. I think as early childhood teachers, and at the risk of getting up on a soapbox here, I will share I do a lot of work with NAEYC and with the CDA Council for Professional Recognition in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that they both are very vocal about is that for far too long, early childhood professionals have kind of been a bit passive about our compensation for the work that we do. We just kind of seem to nod our heads and smile and say, yes, we will accept a little bit of a lower salary, but we love our work. We love working with children. And they're kind of challenging us to say, why can't it be both? Why can't we say we love our work? We believe in what we do. We're doing really important work. We love working with young children. And also, we expect and we demand to be paid fairly. We expect to be compensated appropriately for the work that we do and the outcomes that that we have on young children. So it's important to consider potential income. Industry growth is important too, to understand what current trends are and what future trends look like for that particular line of work. And then also too, and Sarah, I'm sure would champion this, being the mom of 3 young kids. We also have to think about work-life balance and how does this fit into our family's needs and our individual needs as well. So once you know which direction you want to go in, important to know exactly how to get there. Penn Foster, Sarah and I are so proud. We could probably spend another hour talking about our programs. We won't, we promise. But we do have some really great programs that we're proud of. So in our high school, Penn Foster High School program, in our Penn Foster Career School, and in our Penn Foster College, in each of the 3 schools, we have programs specifically in early childhood education. So we refer to as the ECE umbrella or the ECE portfolio. So in our high school program, coming back for just a moment, we have, as part of the Career Pathways program, we have a child care professional. So at the end of a high school diploma program, students are taking a couple courses specifically as a child care professional. Again, looks really great on a transcript, looks really great on a resume to be able to say, while in high school, I took courses specifically as a child care professional. In our career school, nationally and or domestic here in the U.S. and then internationally as well, we have some of these programs offered. In our career school, the coursework that we do is measured not in terms of college credits, it's measured in terms of CEUs. CEU stands for Continuing Education Unit, and you can see the breakdown there of the clock hours that we expect students are probably investing in their coursework, and then also some information there about how long students typically are enrolled. It does not necessarily mean that students need to take that exact amount of time to complete their programs. Students typically are completing these programs in much less than 12 months or 15 months. But that's just a general guideline of how long students are permitted to be enrolled in that particular program. Students also get extensions all the time too. So that's some information about our career school. In our college, we have 2 additional programs. We have an associate degree in early childhood education, 63 college credits delivered over the course of 4 semesters, and does include some really relevant work in the field. So not only are you doing work in theory, but you're also getting your hands and your feet wet, and getting your hands, I guess I want to say, dirty, and really getting into the classroom and interacting very directly with young children and sitting and having conversations with and learning from experienced early childhood professionals, and being able to read stories to kids and do fun science experiments with them, and really get a good feel for the type of work that you're ultimately going to be doing. We also separately have another program, and we're so proud of this one because we worked really hard, and we're so proud of the fact that we are recognized by the CDA Council for Professional Recognition as a gold standard partner with them. That is for our undergraduate certificate in CDA credential preparation. That particular program is also measured in terms of college credits, 13 college credits. And here's what's really cool about that. For students who finish that particular program and then come back to Penn Foster and enroll in the associate degree program, those 13 college credits that they earned in that CDA credential prep program, those 13 credits automatically transfer into the associate degree program. So already you're not earning 63 college credits. At that point, you're earning 50 college credits. And then again, there's also additional opportunity for students to get more transfer credits with the CDA credential earned from the council. So that is all of the information that Sarah and I have for you. It looks like we have some individuals that want to join us, Sarah, on being a travel nanny as well. So we may have started something here. Maybe we'll all have to get together and start our own travel nanny organization. I love it. I love the feedback. So
I
if
do
you have
too.
questions for us, if anything that you'd like to share with us, experiences, questions that you have, we would love to hear from you at this time. And our session is being recorded and it will be sent out. We just want to encourage you to connect with us on Facebook. We're there as PF Sarah, PF standing for Penn Foster, obviously. So PF Sarah, PF Katie. Sarah and I are very active on Pinterest. We love our Pinterest boards. So you can find us there as well. Penn Foster Katie, Penn Foster Sarah, our department chair, Nancy Moretti. You can follow her there as well, Penn Foster Nancy. So definitely come over and check those boards out. Let us know. We also do a lot of optional webinars. We're partnering with our current students and with our former students all the time to present optional fun webinars specific to a topic that's of interest to that particular student or about something new in the field or something they really love to talk about. So please know you can utilize us in that way as well. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, good. So some of you are sharing that you didn't realize that there was so much out there, so many different career paths and different directions that we can go in with early childhood education. So good to know that that this was helpful. Yeah, so there's a specific question here about time towards experience hours for my classes. That's a really great question. So there isn't really opportunity for previous work experience or previous volunteer experiences to be counted moving forward for students in the associate degree program in terms of their field experience. Usually field experience, I shouldn't say usually, always, field experience begins for the students in semester 4. Those 300 hours begin in their 4th semester. But again, if students have a CDA credential, then they can get transfer credit for that way as well. It's a really great question. Thank you. Yeah, but definitely, don't let that deter you from volunteering. I think, it's great when we can get some credit for and some recognition sometimes for volunteering. But if we can't, it doesn't mean that we should walk away from that valuable experience. So many really great opportunities and connections are made through volunteering as well. Okay, so I don't see a lot of other questions. Well, we hope that this was helpful and useful, and we love spending this time with you this afternoon, and we definitely encourage you to reach out, email us. If you're emailing that email address, edserve@pennfoster.edu, please put our names in the subject line or somewhere in the email. Just say that you're trying to get a hold of Sarah and Katie in early childhood education, and they'll get the email over to us as well. Okay. Sarah, what do you think? I know I did a lot of the talking. I'm so sorry.
You did a great job, though. Thanks for sharing all of that with everyone.
I enjoyed it. I'd love to, we both would, Sarah and I would love to hear from you and let us know if any of these ideas work out for you or if you come up with other ideas that we may have missed this afternoon. Entirely possible that we overlooked something, I'm sure. So if you come up with some other creative careers in early childhood education, please definitely reach out and let us know. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. You're very welcome. We're glad that we were able to spend this time with you and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday afternoon. And we hope we get to connect with you again sometime very soon. So thanks, everybody. Have a really great rest of your day. Thanks, Sarah. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.